welcome back to another Celebrity Lockdown Lives with me, Anthony Miller. Well, she puts her heart and soul into everything she does, and for that reason, I am China in her hands, and I can't get any more cliches into this conversation. Carol Decker, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm sure you could get a few more in if you tried really hard. Like we could do some sex talk, maybe.
Maybe some
sex talk.
You
could be my Valentine.
Yes. I love it. So, Celebrity Lockdown Lives, how's it been for you in the old lockdown?
Oh, pretty up and down, if I'm honest. And if anybody follows me on Twitter, they know I have a anti-lockdown rant from time to time, because it isn't something that I agree with anymore, and I'd like Boris to speed the fuck up. I know you're in Ireland, it's different, but yeah, I found it really difficult. So I found, obviously, I'm usually working somewhere. You know, my job is physical, and so all the gigs disappeared, and I'm not used to being at home this much.
Yeah,
and and the biggest thing for me was the loss of our personal freedoms. It was like a dystopian nightmare, like still is, like a terrible zombie movie where being told when I can go out of the house, I can't, if I can sit on a bench, you know, people sort of throwing themselves into hedges if you walk past them. Maybe that's just because it was me, they don't like me, I don't know. You know, diving into just all of that. I cannot still, a year later, get used to it. I can't accept it. I found it really, really upsetting. And especially, you know, I've got kids. My daughter graduated last year by email. You know, it was all really sad for all of her and her mates. And my son's back at college in a mask all day. I just can't get over it at all. With the deepest respect for the tragedies and the deaths, which, you know, I know it exists. I'm not denying anything. I'm just talking about the impact on everybody is different and wide ranging, isn't it? You know. Yeah. So I have been quite up and down about it. And when it first started, I thought I didn't believe it. So I was like everybody. I thought it's going to be a couple of months. Kind of weird, actually. Quite good, have a couple of months at home, you know, it's just going to be a couple of months. So I did everything, like I tidied out my cutlery drawer, and I was putting like funny Twitter photographs showing that I'd lined up all my utensils, and I was like, and somebody, you know, would reply and say, save your sock drawer for the weekend, so you've still got something to do. And it was all, nobody really believed it, and we were all being sort of a bit flippant about it. And then, you know, I was just walking the dog for miles every day, and then I'd go for long drives about tea time so that I didn't kill the family, which I thought was a good thing to do.
Now there's a good tip.
I had no idea if I was meant to go on that long drive, but I live out in the countryside in Oxfordshire, so didn't know who was going to, you know, see me. So I'd get in the car, get the radio on, and just go for an hour's drive just around the country lanes, just with a coffee, and just try and get some time to myself, because I think life is all about momentum and dynamism, and I love my family very much. I live nicely. I have a nice house. I know this room looks a bit messy, but I do have a nice house, a big garden. I'm a very lucky girl. Yeah. But all being on top of each other 24/7, and everybody was a bit low by 6 or 7 months, you know. Yeah. And so I thought I needed a little bit of time to myself, so just go for a drive, you know.
Yeah, I came back to, as we were talking earlier on before we came on air, I come back to lockdown with my parents who are elderly, so I thought rather than them get locked in on their own, I'll go and be the hero, you know. But I've got to say, the first few weeks, we're lucky that none of us became a garden feature, because I live alone as well, so I'm just not used to the TV on and the lights on and the things being made.
I know, and my daughter, she's been away at uni, you know, for 3 years, and all of a sudden she's home, and she's 22 now, but you know, she was 21 when she came back, and I'm going like, are you leaving those cups there?
Yeah.
Get the towel, that wet stinky towel, off the floor. And she's been leaving her cups everywhere, and her towels on the floor for 3 years, quite happily, without my interference.
Yeah.
So it's been, but don't get me wrong, we haven't had any sort of real high dramas. Me and my husband have had a couple of rows, definitely had a couple of big rows, where, because he's in hospitality, and I'm in business, so we're like double fucked, you know.
Yeah.
No working off your laptop in your underpants, this household. Yeah, so yeah, we've had our moments, and now I feel a little bit more cheerful, because hopefully, you know, the gigs are coming back. I've got emails now. Postponed shows seem to be going ahead. Excuse me. So I'm feeling a bit more optimistic, but I personally have found it hard. And no, I didn't learn another language or write a screenplay.
Well, I see a sewing machine there. What's that about? Is it decor?
That is a sewing machine that I never touch.
Yeah.
That was bought for me by my husband. He always takes me at my word. So about 20 years ago, I said things like, I really wish I could sew. So he gets me a sewing machine. And then I said, oh, you know, I'm sure it'd help my songwriting if I could just play the guitar. So he buys me a beautiful guitar, which I've picked up 3 times. Because what he doesn't realize is I have no patience, and I'm definitely too old to learn things, I think. What I really want is the matrix chip in the back of the head.
Yeah.
That you can play the guitar, fly a fighter jet. I don't want to learn anything. So this house is full of things where I've gone, oh, if only he goes out and gets it for me, because he's lovely.
Yeah, I think I live that life thinking I have the matrix chip in my head, and then I find myself in the middle of things thinking, how did I end up here? And who am I now responsible for, and how can I get out of this without hurting anybody?
I do that. I agree to a lot of things when I'm drunk as well, which is really we used to live a couple of doors from a really good pub in London, and I just used to be in there every night, and Richard would come home from work and I go, this is and we're going on holiday.
Yeah.
In August. I get myself into loads of trouble. So.
I love it. Absolutely.
I've got loads of half-finished decorating because I just lost hope. So I started, I'm going to be industrious. Nothing we can do about this. There's lots of bits of the house are tatty. So I got a load of samples for the living room wall. And it's now still covered in a patchwork of different shades of white. Beautiful.
You know, this is gay man hell, by the way. You're giving me, you're going to bring me out in a rash now. You know, us gays like to decorate. That's the one thing that
you have to come and do it for me.
Yeah, we do have that chip. It's an automatic chip for
I was so fed up. By the time I put all the samples up on the wall, I just went, I really don't give a fuck. And they're still all there.
We're not decorating anymore, honey.
I've got a rum and ice.
Get it, as I said, Ireland, get it, India. So, Carol, going back obviously to the beginning of the career, I mean, I think I read that you did it the old style where you were sending cassettes and touring the country in a van. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, that's how you did it back then, because this was in the early 80s, you know, snail mail, no internet. I don't think we had mobile phones till the late 80s. And you tried to build a local following. Back then, the record companies, I lived in Shrewsbury in Shropshire. And back then, the big record companies would usually have an office in a regional bigger town like Wolverhampton or Birmingham, you know, and they'd be called a record company scout.
Yeah.
So you try and get a gig in Birmingham or Wolverhampton and hope that one of them would come to see you. And times we would get in touch with record company A&R people, and we'd go all the way from Shrewsbury to London, which was a 3-hour drive. And we had to wait for our guitarist, who was the manager of the local music shop, who also owned the van and could get the PA for nothing, because often people were in bands then because they owned a van. Really good. So we'd have to wait for Julian, who was very good, to finish work at 6 and tear ass up the motorway for 3 hours to London to do a gig in the Sir George Robey in Holloway, which was a shithole, and the A&R man didn't turn up, you know, and neither did anybody else. So we did a lot of that. Did a lot of that for years, and lots of covers, you know. Yeah. Lots of cover functions, weddings, and you know, working man's clubs. And as I love to say, because I was in Shropshire, young farmers' balls. Love to say that.
Well, I love love the farmers' balls. We have lots of them in Ireland.
Love young farmers' balls, yeah.
Yeah.
And they would literally host the shit out of the cowshed as you got there, and you'd be sitting at the gate with the smell of that sweet smell of manure. So we did that for years and years, and then I met Ronnie, who was my boyfriend for 13 years as well, and he was in another local band. I have to praise this a bit because it would take forever. And he joined my band, and we started writing for that band, and then we decided to stop gigging. My dad lent us about 800 quid, which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And we bought, sorry, my contact's playing up. We bought some home recording equipment and a new keyboard with a sequencer in it. It could have been a Roland D50, D something or other. Somebody might know what it was.
One of them fancy ones.
One of them. And we started writing and just sending our tapes away, So we decided to focus on that. And finally, we got some London management.
Yeah.
And then after many close but no cigar run-ins with various record companies. I've got, God, so long ago, I'm forgetting. We got a small publishing deal with MCA. So we got £5,000 off MCA, which was a fortune.
Yeah.
And then we got London management, and then who could put us in front of the right people. And then finally we got a record deal with a label called Siren, which was owned by Virgin. So we were on Virgin Worldwide and Siren in the UK. And the day we signed to Siren Records, when I got home back to Shrewsbury, in the mail on the mat was a rejection letter from Virgin.
Wow.
So the MD of our company, because I owned our label, so the MD of our company, David Bettridge, he had that framed in his office loo.
Brilliant.
Whoever the head of that was at Virgin going, no, I don't think so.
So China in Your Hands, then, what was the inspiration for that song? Because obviously it's the biggest hit, it's the one everybody thinks of. How did that come about?
One hand, not two. China in your hand.
I keep saying it, I keep doing that, I know, sorry.
Basically, I was watching a really interesting documentary, and it was the story of, well, everybody knows the story of Frankenstein. Most people do. Yeah. Most people, if you've read the book, or most people know the usually clunky, clumsy interpretations in the movies. I don't think anyone's ever quite got it right.
Right.
Even Nero tried to do it method, and it was just awkward. I think Boris Karloff with a bolt through his neck was slightly better and a big square head. But anyway, Mary Shelley, who wrote the book, she was 19, and she was married to Percy Bysshe Shelley, and they were friends with Lord Byron and that whole bohemian Fitzrovian intellectual elite.
Yeah.
So she's 19 years old, and she has this basically pulp fiction hit with Frankenstein. And it caused a lot of infighting and jealousies, and their whole group sort of fell apart. Because of different opinions on it. They were already snotty about it. It's this piece of trash and all that. So to me, it was a story within a story that, the story of Frankenstein, when Dr. Frankenstein brings the monster to life.
Yeah.
He's like he's created life. He's like he's God. But it all goes horribly wrong. So it's be careful what you wish for, isn't it? And it was the same with the writing of the book. She had this massive success that impacted on all her and her husband's relationships, and they disintegrated. So it was a story within a story about the same thing. It's a parable for be careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
because your dreams may come true and you can't help them.
Do isn't that such a thing actually? That once it's out of the bag, you can't kind of put it back in again, can you?
No, and I just found that really interesting, the human aspect to the story, behind that book. So that's what China in Your Hand is about. Oh, and the China in Your Hand bit, yeah. It was the fragility of it all, and that's based around Ronnie's mum gave us a tea set.
Okay.
She didn't anymore, and we were so poor, we were always getting donations from our parents, my mum was always giving me sheets, and Olive was always giving us, she'd make pies for us and stuff, and she gave us some crockery, and she gave me a couple of these cups from an old china set that she'd had, which she didn't use anymore. And then I held it up to the light. In the bottom of the cup was a lady's face.
Right.
So I've still got that cup packed up in a cupboard. I don't know if it's valuable or anything, but it was so delicate that when you finished your tea, the light, you'd see this she looked Japanese to me because she had the big bun with the chopsticks through, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that gave me the title of the song, that things are very fragile. Things can be very fragile. So I'm probably mixing my metaphors and I don't know what.
No, it's working. I'm with you. No, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Fragility, be careful what you wish for, genie out of the bottle stuff, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was listening to some of the songs earlier. Obviously, the first time around I would have heard them, I would have been but a little knee-high to a grasshopper. Yeah, my mom told me all about your music. I'm joking, by the way. I'm joking. I'm kidding. But I was listening, and actually, I know that, and I'm not a muso, so forgive me, I'm not technical in any way.
Me either.
But with China in Your Hand, that saxophone solo, I think that's a really big hook, and maybe a big reason of why it was.
It's iconic. That saxophone solo is iconic, and it was played by a guy called Gary Barnacle.
Yeah.
And if you Google Gary Barnacle, he's played on every 80s record you can lay your name to.
Right.
And if you watch Top of the Pops, he was often on, he would, because we all mimed on Top of the Pops, he'd have a white sax to mime to.
Yeah.
And you will see him with Bowie, with George Michael, you name it. The Gary Barnacle was the go-to guy, but he was also excellent, you know. And he came up with this iconic sax solo. So now when I do the song with different house bands, you know, because I do a lot of festivals and I don't always use my own band, you just sort of drop in front of the house band. I insist it's note for note. I don't want some kind of jam of a sax solo. I want it exactly as it is on the single.
Yeah, well, that's what I was, because it's a fingerprint actually within the song, isn't it? And it would be wrong if it was even slightly off. And then I noticed then with Heart and Soul, which whenever I was younger, I think that was probably my favorite song.
Yeah.
But I noticed today with something that I'd never noticed before, there's like, I think it was 4 layers. So you had the drums, which was giving you something to dance to.
Yeah.
Then you had the guitars, then you had you talking, and then you had you singing. And get these 4 layers kind of going at the same time. And I think back then that was a pretty different thing, wasn't it? Or it certainly seems to be, yeah.
Well, that was our first big hit internationally. It got to number 4 in the States as well, which was great. And that was a tricky balance. Even the demo, if you hear the demo version of it, to get 2 vocals happening at the same time, be able to hear both of them.
It makes sense. Yeah.
And then, as you say, there's also the bass riff, which is dun 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 throughout the whole song. And that song came about when we bought the keyboard with the money my dad lent us. It was a new toy. So basically a sequence plays itself. So you instead of playing everything yourself, you programmed it and then you press go and it would play whatever you'd programmed. So Ronnie was mucking about and he's just going dun, 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 and you just put it on a loop. And then you start riffing over that constant loop. So that song was born out of having a new toy. So China was born out of a big story. Heart and Soul was literally born out of a new toy. We're playing with a new toy, and there you go.
I love it.
I have to say that our first album and our second album, Rage, which was also a platinum album, produced by the legendary Roy Thomas Baker, who produced, you know, so many artists, but Queen, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody, all those big hits.
Wow, yeah.
And an excellent engineer called Jerry Napier, who'd been Neil Young's front of house engineer for about 15 years, and they just knew what they were doing. And then we had it was mastered by Bob Clearmountain in New York, and everybody went to Bob Clearmountain to master your album, which is another layer of mixing. So they balance all the frequencies and make sure it pops on radio and stuff. So yeah, in fact, I found a picture of me the other day because Roy made Ronnie and I come to New York to watch our first album being mastered. And I found that snap the other day and I've lost it again. I put it back in the drawer of doom.
We've all got one of those, or a few of those actually.
Yeah, so he said, you need to see this. This is an important step to watch your song being mastered. Yeah,
and it really is. And that I was going to ask you that next. When did you kind of get that moment of realizing, shit, we've hit the big time now?
With Heart and Soul, because China in Your Hand, it wasn't written, we didn't get our deal with China in Your Hand at all. It was a half-finished demo that Ronnie and I were still working on. We got our deal Valentine was always the song that everybody loved. Valentine was always the big tune.
Okay.
And sort of like bring everything up to the quality of Valentine. So that was the one, that was the benchmark. And then I knew we had something special with Heart and Soul, but it had a bumpy start. It got released in the UK, flopped massively.
Yeah.
But then started climbing up the Billboard chart in America. So it got a reprieve and got re-released. And it also got picked up by Pepe jeans, who are really trendy jeans.
Yeah. I remember Pepe.
Cinema campaign commercials.
Yeah.
And that was it. We got a reprieve, and all of a sudden we were the new kids on the block. So Heart and Soul. And then it went top 5, most territories that it was released in. So we knew we got our toe in the door, but it's still hard to stay there,
Yeah. What was the most celebrity thing you did around that time? You've got your newfound fame that you can share.
Okay, I would say, because as I say, Virgin was our mother label globally. Mm-hmm. So I was at the Brit Awards, and we were nominated for loads, never ever got one, which I always thought was a bit odd.
It was a fix. Disclaimer: it wasn't a fix.
Well, who cares? And Richard Branson came up to me and introduced himself, because I hadn't actually met him, because Richard then was so high up, he didn't actually do much for the label anymore. And he said, came up and said, I just wanted to congratulate you and say you've done brilliantly for yourself and brilliantly for the label, and we're really happy. And I was a bit pissed, and I said, well, if you're that grateful, how about a free holiday on Necker Island? And he gave me 2 weeks on Necker Island.
Oh,
mates and half the band and stuff, and that was it. So that was pretty swanky. And the housekeeper would come to you in the morning and go, where would you like lunch today? And I'd be like, oh questions. Because you could go, they had on the island, they've got like different points where they'll take lunch, where the sun catches or the shade is, or you could go, there was the boat, you could go on the boat, or you could be indoors or on the patio. There's about 5 things. It's really hard.
Bore somebody else with your questions.
Yeah. And then she'd say, what would you like? Oh, So that was absolutely brilliant. And because Richard owned Virgin Airlines as well, we always flew first class.
Oh, lovely.
So nice. I went very quickly. Firstly, our fame was very hard won. Ronnie and I were working hard for 4 or 5 years before we got our deal. And I was on and off the dole, in and out of dead end jobs. Ronnie was a telephone engineer. So it was hard won. But once we had it, it was very quickly first class this, 5-star that, very, very quickly.
And that's just what you want to hear. You hear people talking about, oh, well, I stayed grounded. No, I want to hear you did first class. And
I love it. But when all those glory days were over, and I tried to turn left on an EasyJet flight and find myself next to the captain, it was kind of like, what's this?
Who are you?
Who are you? Yeah, it was heady times, and yeah, definitely. It was exciting, exhausting, but enormous fun,
Gorgeous. And what about other stars? Did you secretly hate anybody that was in the top 10 at the same time as you?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. They hated me. Yeah. Well, now we all, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what people know, but there's a huge amount of 80s festivals around now. And I did the first 80s tour in 2001. Did all the arenas over here in the UK, the Wembley, the NEC, the SECC, MEN in Manchester, and with Paul Young, Kim Wilde, Go West, us and China Crisis. And we, even all those years later, sort of 3/4 sold them out. It was quite a healthy turnout. And I haven't stopped since. And there's all these huge festivals. So now most of us are good pals, because it's 30 plus years later for a lot of us. All that competitive stuff's over. We're all grown up with kids. Some people are grandparents, but back then we were all quite sniffy with each other, and you sort of you got your midweek chart information. So you were given the midweek chart information by your label on like a Wednesday.
Yeah.
So you knew who was going up and who was going down for the chart rundown on Sunday on Radio 1.
Yeah.
And you used to be like, damn that wet. And then Jericho, damn that Mark Shaw, got up ahead of us.
I love it. So, I mean, huge star. And I mean, everybody knows who you are. I mean, you don't have to say the name twice. You don't need to explain the name. But you had this rocketing career. But what goes up must come down.
Of course.
How was that?
Horrible, absolutely horrible. I was, we were looking back now. We did okay, like 4 years. We got signed in 86 and we broke up in 91. And we had, 8 top 40 singles, 3 top 10 albums. Quadruple platinum, we did really, really well. And then it all fell apart in that cliched way that you hear so many times from other bands in their autobiographies or interviews, ripped off by our management.
Yeah.
To the tune of 100 grand. It took me 4 years to get it back. And he spent the same amount in legal fees getting it back off the bastard.
Yeah.
Because Ronnie and I wrote all the songs, we were signed to the label, then we employed the musicians. So when the money started rolling in, there was a disparity between what we earned and what they did.
Yeah.
May I say, they earned very, very, very good money. Mm-hmm. But Ronnie and I were the writers of the songs. And that was in the days before streaming decimated people's royalties, and you earned a lot of money, you did. But please, can I make it clear, they weren't living in a hovel or in their van. I was in a castle, they earned 100 grand a year sometimes.
Yeah.
But that caused arguments. Then we had to negotiate that they got a percentage of merchandise because they were on the road all the time, which is fair enough. Then they wanted to do some co-writing with us to get some investment there, and that was fine. They were talented. We wrote The Promise is a great album, and we co-wrote that, all of us together.
Okay.
But there was we were always talking to each other through lawyers, and we'd stopped being these fantastic mates. And now it was like, you talk to my lawyer, that was horrible. And the management thing. And then EMI bought Virgin and they dumped 80 bands, and we were one of them because our album sales had gone like that. Even though our last album, The Promise, was top 10.
Yeah.
They didn't give you time to catch your breath, because lots of bands down the years have gone down a little bit, caught their breath, had a couple of albums that weren't as massive, and then come back up again, but nobody wanted to stick with us. So we got dumped by the label unceremoniously. And the guy who was managing me at the time told me this, like, in my dressing room at Hammersmith Odeon. Like,
yeah, thanks so much.
I'm about to go on stage, And because we had, you have a recoupment debt, to the advances that you'd had.
Yeah.
So he went to me, "You are a very lucky girl." And I went, "Why? What?" He went, "You have just walked away from an £800,000 debt." Label have dropped us.
Oh no.
Well, that's the way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So that was horrible. And then eventually we all fell out badly, so we didn't speak to each other for years. And then Ronnie's mum had died, and then my father died suddenly of a heart attack, and then Ronnie wasn't happy in our relationship anymore, so that came to an end. And it was just awful. It was horrible. I had this charmed, like I said, hard-won success, hard-won. But it was charmed when it arrived. And I did struggle for quite some time with depression and disappointment. And, I mean, it's such a long time ago now, I've got perspective on it, but this will make you laugh. So when I was like the little darling, if I had a birthday, I didn't have enough mantelpieces and shelves for all the cards.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
There was like 2 cards, one from my mum.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. And the thing I missed the most was our record label and our publishing house used to send us Fortnum and Mason hampers for Christmas. You know how much those things are worth.
Oh yes, love.
I've still got one in my laundry basket. and it's all good. So I missed all that. You get so spoiled, and then you're literally spat out. You know, I was calling BT to see if my line was still working because nobody was calling me. Like, can you check my line? The phone doesn't ever seem to ring anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're hot, and when you're not, you're not. And it's a brutal business.
Management in one way or another, or their label.
Oh, well, you're so busy and you're young and you're a creative. I think you see a lot of young people today who are in I call it the wider church of entertainment, like bloggers and influencers and all that. They seem really savvy. I wasn't at all. And having spent 4 or 5 years in pub bands and club bands, and I was 26 by the time I got my management. That's like geriatric.
Yeah.
They just, you know, they handed a contract and I just went, where? Sorry, where? You know, I didn't like question it, challenge it, make sure it was the right thing. I just like sold my soul because I wanted my chance, and I knew that time was running out. So maybe, you know, we should have been a bit more savvy. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Did you think at the time, was there a way to fight back, or did you just feel completely, there's nothing I can do now?
I don't know. I fell apart, I think, because I didn't sort of pull myself together and launch some amazing solo career. You know, if Virgin didn't want me anymore, it didn't stop other labels from possibly wanting me. And I never met anyone that did. I think everybody thought we were over, and I was over. So it was difficult. It just didn't happen. And the 90s was a blur of just depression and you know, bad behavior. Probably I went over to the States for a while to live with my best friend who was out there. He was also my tour manager, and just stayed out there mucking about. You know, at least I wasn't broke. That was consolation. I had that to be grateful for. But I was lost. You know, my career, my dad, my relationship, all in the space of like 18 months. Or the band, we were so close. It's like Dominic Cummings and Boris.
Yeah.
It's like love and hate. There's a fag paper between them, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah.
But when you look back at how close you were, how hard you worked, and all the tough times you went through, and then you can't even fucking stand to be in the same room anymore. It's horrible. It's really horrible. So it took some getting over. So I started doing, because I was a little bit well known, I started doing a bit of radio work, presenting, a little bit of acting. Little projects would crop up that would just keep me busy, and you know. And then finally in 97 I met a guy called Will Ashurst in my local pub, who had worked for EMI, and he now had a video production company, and he persuaded me to get back on the road, and he put a band around me of young guys, including his brother Jez Ashurst, who's a really successful songwriter now. And I started climbing my way back up to working again. Yeah. And I had to just bring down my expectation to just working again. As a
That's tough. I mean, that what a phrase. Bring it back to just working again. I mean, tough.
You know, if anyone, you know, it went from being glorious and massive to nobody gives a shit. Yeah. It really is terrible, you know. So I started building up a little bit of following again, put out an album called Red. Will also introduced me to my now husband. And then in 1998 and 2002, I had my kids. So I was 40 when I had Scarlett and 45 when I had Dylan. So, you know, at least I had the space and the time to you know, to start a family, which was great. Yeah. And then in 2001, I get this call, do you want to do an 80s tour? And that was it. And I haven't had a hit record since, but I haven't stopped working, and I've done amazing, again, just fantastic things. Like 2019 I did China in Your Hand with the Opera North Orchestra. It's called 80s Classical. It's a 70s orchestra. There's me, Jimmy Somerville, Midge Ure, Howard Jones, you know, we do all that. We're going out there again this year because I think it's already scheduled. I've got a 30-date tour in Germany with Night of the Proms, which again is a massive orchestra and a choir. So it's all the classical interpretation of our songs is really big right now.
I think that's a bit gorgeous as well, actually. Yeah,
big festivals. Came over to Southern Ireland last year, to Dublin, do a massive 80s festival out there. and it's all shock and awe. You know, I've done so many wonderful things. I stood in for Gary Davis on BBC Radio 2 last year when he went on holiday, because we went out to Ibiza together, all of us, to do a big, you know, Hard Rock Cafe in Ibiza with all the Radio 2 lots who play all the 80s stuff. And so from that they said, oh, will you stand in for Gary, you know. So loads of things come my way. To have another hit record would be a cherry on a cake, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, you're having a go at that at the minute. There's a single out. It has released, hasn't it, now? Or
30th of April.
Okay.
So it's called Guess Who's Sorry Now, and it's a download single, and it drops on the 30th of April on all the usual download platforms, you know. And we put a lockdown single out last year called Be Wonderful, which has a great video. If you want to go to YouTube and put into POW Be Wonderful, you'll see my kids filmed it for me. So it was the first lockdown, so we just kept it funny, and it stars our dog, our chickens, our duck, and me in a onesie, and the Mutant Ninja Turtles. So that was good fun, and it's a great song, Be Wonderful. And so now we're doing Guess Who's Sorry Now. So we did Be Wonderful, Guess Who's Sorry Now. We've got another one coming out called Stupid Love Song, which Ronnie and I recorded and got all the vocals finished just before the first lockdown. And then we sort of went like this for a while, and then thought, oh, let's just put them out, you know.
Yeah. So, are you doing this all independently or under a label, or?
No, it's my label. It's called Natfish Records. It's all independent. And I'm working on a box set with Universal, which is another greatest hits thing, and I think they want to license some of the new tracks so that people have got new stuff to listen to alongside the old hits, you know. And it's just really hard. It's a practical thing here. So you'll hear my old stuff played every day, all the time.
Yeah.
And all those stations are formatted to the 80s.
Yeah.
But I can't get my new stuff played because I'm too old.
I know, it's bonkers, isn't it?
You can't get your new stuff any traction on radio. You'll hear China in Your Hand, Heart and Soul all the time, and that's great. Thank you. Grateful. Yeah. But they will not play. Madonna moaned about this.
Yeah, I was just going to say it. I remember Madonna saying,
not playing her anymore. She's just too old, and it's just like, and especially as all of us in our heads are still 25, it's really hard.
Tell me about it.
But it is hard. It's formatting. It's bloody formatting, you know. So there you go.
Well, we need to disrupt that. I don't know how you disrupt that, but you need to disrupt it in some way.
Well, if people would be so, if you go on to my Twitter feed, which is at Carol Decker. When are you going to broadcast this?
This week.
Okay, so if you go on to at Carol Decker on Twitter, and you'll see all there's a pinned tweet for Guess Who's Sorry Now, so that'll take you to where you can buy it and everything. And it's a really corking little tune, so I hope people enjoy it.
Gorgeous. Well, I really hope so. So getting back then, you said that you kind of diversified into television and stuff like that. I've got to ask you about 9 Dead Gay Guys. It's 9, wasn't it? It wasn't 6, it was 9, wasn't it? 9. Yeah, tell us about that.
Again, I had an acting agent, and he just said, it's just a little role. It's a part with Stephen Burkoff, who basically just shagged me to death. Have you seen the film?
No, I haven't. I literally found out about it today, and I'm like, I've got to watch this.
I don't have any vocabulary at all, any script. He's just shagging me, and I die, and that's it. My mum was so proud. Proud.
One of those wonderful moments.
Fish was in it from Marillion, and Michael Praed, who's really gorgeous. But I was going, I'm in a scene with Stephen Burkoff. I didn't get to say fucking word.
In the scene with Stephen Burkoff with your kid off.
we broke the bed.
Hilarious.
And we were in someone's flat, because people rent their places out.
Yeah.
Locations. We were actually in someone's flat, and they had a beautiful wooden bed, and we broke it.
Shoot. And I've got to ask you as well, we were talking earlier about bitchiness and all the rest. Gary Barlow had a bit of a bitchy swipe at you, didn't he?
Yeah, it was quite a few years ago now, and somebody was doing China in Your Hand on the X Factor, and he said it was quite nice to hear it sung in tune for a change, which I took very personally, as you can imagine.
I can imagine, yes.
Yeah, I presume he meant me. It some friends have since said to me, do you think he means because it's a really hard song to sing and people murder it in karaoke?
No, he was being a bitch.
That he was being a bitch about me, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think I'm out of tune.
No, you're never out of tune, actually. And like ever. Yeah, so that was shocking. But what about things like that then? So what do you think about these, you know, these TV shows? They call them hit factories, or, you know, the production line of stars. What do you make of those? And would you have entered one if you were 16 and it was happening now?
Yeah, I would. I when things were going slowly for me getting my own break, I used to come down to London and audition all the time for musicals and backing vocals for other people, and never get it. I'd never get a job. So it's the equivalent of that, isn't it? Like casting call stuff, you know. And I don't blame kids. I haven't watched those programs for years because I'm just over reality shows.
Yeah.
And that's the annoying bit about Gary's comments was we didn't watch X Factor, and my children who were young at the time, they didn't watch it either. Right. So my friend who's in productions emailed me and said, heads up, there's a contestant called Amelia Lilly doing China. So I said to the kids, oh, somebody's singing Mummy's song on X Factor. So we get all lined up. So the kids have got the Pringles and the juice, and me and Richard have got the wine, and we're all excited, and we watch her. And she was 16. She did a really good, you know, had a really good go at it.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach when he said that, because I felt really taken by surprise.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting him to make a snide comment about me in her performance. I don't know him. I've never met him. So I was shocked, and the children were really upset. They were going, Mummy, what's he saying about you? And it was just so odd. It was really so odd.
That's really awful. Actually, just said the same there. I was near, like, if I had emotions, I would have been crying right now. I mean, that was pretty grim.
I literally felt I'd had the wind knocked out of me, because I didn't expect him to mention me at all. It was all about her, and I was looking forward to hearing how she sang the song, you know. So anywho, and then the X Factor phoned me up, because you know they have the extra factor.
Yeah.
Because I've gone straight onto my Twitter and gone, what the fuck is your problem?
Yeah, yeah.
And they said, do you want to come on the phone with him on the Extra Factor and talk to him? And I went, yeah. And I'd had like half a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc.
Fight him in the car park, yeah.
And he wouldn't, and he just put out a lame apology on Twitter, going, that was uncalled for, sorry, you know. So he did sort of grudgingly apologize, but it was a shock at the time, but hey. Not nice.
If you're watching this, Gary Barlow, which I highly doubt, but should you find yourself watching it, you're such a bitch. Okay. leave my mate alone. So I mean, we see now, like, we're talking about these shows and everybody wants to be dead famous. If you were going to give advice to the kids coming up, or the new acts, what would it be?
Oh God, I don't know if I'm in a position to give any advice, because it'd be saying do all the things that I didn't do, which is, you know, stay grounded, make sure you've got the right people around you, but nothing. Okay, I've told you what it was like to have 4 years of a very high profile career and then lose it.
Yeah.
For them to be jettisoned to that enormous amount of attention and fame in weeks.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
And then once you're off the show, it's gone. I think they must need some kind of psychological counselling to cope with it. Because most of us lead fairly ordinary lives, and you always think that famous people have got it all, and it will just, if you know, who was it said most people are living in the gut. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Now, some fantastic writer said that, and I'm having a too much rum moment. I can't remember.
That's okay.
But we do, don't we? You know, most of us are in some dead-end job, or if I could just get this gig, you know, and they do that in the backstory, don't they? My mum's on benefits, my nan's got cancer, if I could just win the program, you know. Play on everybody's hard luck stories and the genuine troubles in their lives, and I think to be lifted out of that it's intoxicating to be lifted out of that by being famous. I felt really validated when I became famous, because I also had my insecurities. I'd been, bullied at school. I'd been ostracized by some people. I'd had my times in my young life where someone hadn't been nice to me. I was horrifically bullied by a maths teacher at school who would just, well, she's probably dead by now, so it doesn't matter. But she destroyed me. I used to have psychosomatic stomach aches, migraines, everything for one of her lessons. She frightened me so much. And she used to say, if you cannot answer this question, you do not deserve a place in this school, Carol. She used to say that in front of the whole class. She used to humiliate me. So you get you know how powerful a teacher is? Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. So you can make or break a kid. Yeah. So I had all my own stuff, get out. Yeah. And when I became famous, I looked down the camera at Top of the Pops and like, are you watching me now?
Yeah, have a bit of that.
Fuck you. So Pythagoras theorem, and fuck you, blah, blah, who bullied me. And one prefect used to hate me, and she used to pin me up against the wall and pull my berry down till it was down to my nose, because you're meant to wear your berry all the time. Yeah. So anybody who'd really been horrible to me, I felt so validated that I'd made it. I'd finally made it, and I hope they all felt good about themselves. Yeah,
I can actually share in that. So I was expelled in my final year of school. So I wasn't allowed to do GCSEs or A levels or RSAs or a first aid certificate, none of it. And I remember, I won't mention names because they're probably still alive, a teacher saying to me, you'll be outside the Dole office kicking a Coke can up and down the street kind of thing, So I got a modelling contract at 16. I was managing the agency by 21, and I now have a first class honours degree, nearly qualified barrister.
Blah, blah, blah. I live alone in Cornwall with my cat.
I smell of Watsons.
Funny, yeah. So anyway, getting back to your point, those kids who were made uber famous in 5 minutes and then dumped, that's going to be hard to come to terms with. It really is. And they are all so young. I was 26 when I got my management. I was 30 when China on Your Hand was in the chart. So at least I was sort of a grown up, and it still fucked my head up. Yeah. To lose it all,
Yeah, no, I understand. Absolutely understand. Would you encourage your children or prevent your children from entering the music industry?
Neither.
Okay.
Whatever they choose to do, I'd support, but they're not going to do that. Scarlett's 22 now. She graduated last year in animation production, so she's a drawer and all that kind of thing. And Dylan, he's 18. He's still at he's in his final year at Sixth Form College, so he's sweet because he's still, doing that whole I'm gonna be a truck driver, I'm gonna be an astronaut, I'm gonna be a fireman. Kids do that. They're passionate about something every week, So I don't know, and they haven't shown an interest in it at all, and that's fine. They'll find their own way, I guess.
Yeah, good. Carol, it has been absolutely gorgeous talking to you. I literally could open about 6 bottles and sit all night, but obviously can't do that. I wish you every success with the new single and the tours. And please come back and let us know what's happening. I mean, we are an open forum and we love having you here. You are a gay icon. We adore you. Your music's fantastic. It will live forever. So thank you so much for spending time with us.
Bless you. If I can just say as a parting shot, these days social media is the way of keeping abreast. So the website, topow.co.uk, or our Facebook, which is topow/Carol Decker, then you can see what I'm doing, where the band are, if the gigs have come back, and they are. Come and see us and have some fun.
Gorgeous. We'll be there. Definitely. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, darling. Pleasure.
Just to hear your voice again. With full control, I changed it. tears you cried.